Hello guys, welcome back to Zoltan Trader. So today we'll be looking at this exclusive interview with Zoltan Pozsar, and I find it rather interesting. So I decided to share a little bit of my thought with you guys. If you're interested uh, in this, please consider subscribe to our channel because in our channel we will definitely share more about the macro views and all these interesting things shared by the most profound investors and economists. So, in today's episode, we'll be looking at his, I would say, really interesting interview with the World Gold Council. So, the title of the interview is Adapting to the New World Order. So, you're probably going to see this word a lot, the New World Order, and without actually knowing the meaning of it. So I think in this interview, Zoltan Pozsar actually lay out very important points and perspectives on how he perceived the world or the new world order. So he actually gives you a better peek of what's going to happen in the future. So now we can see this 2% and going back to the oh well, I don't think it stands a snowball's chance in hell. Low inflation is over. We are not going back. Okay, so this interview took place in last year. So it was like, oh no, it was like 2023. So excuse me because, pardon me. Okay, so today is already 2025. So that means he had this interview way before what happened right now. So recently we're seeing this U.S. inflation going back from 2.4% to 2.7%. And the Jeremy Powell actually said higher for longer. He decided to have a hawkish pivot rather than just raise interest rate. He decided to lower 25 basis points during the last FOMC, and now the entire Wall Street, they are quite pissed off because of this, because of inflation is climbing back up, and the fact that he's lowering the Fed fund rate by 25 basis point, and without halting for another meeting. So that's why, uh, you know, by now when we look back to this interview, when he said the inflation is going to climb back up, I think Zoltan Pozsar had a point and he was right. Okay, so here you can see this summary. It's basically lay out most of his views. Okay, first of all, it would be that he thinks we are moving into a multipolar reserve currency world where the dollar will be challenged by the renminbi and the euro for reserve currency status. I understand a lot of people would say China economy is right now drowning in debt crisis. I have made tons of videos explain that, so I'm not going to explain that again. I believe China's economy right now is having huge problem, but the fact that you have most products, you have most merchandise are produced in with the Chinese economy, with the from China, that's making the renminbi as one of the most powerful reserve currency the world could ever think of. And Zoltan Pozsar, by saying that, he's not denying the importance of dollar. He's not saying that dollar is not going to be a clearing currency. He says it's going to be a multipolar reserve currency. That means you have renminbi becoming more and more important. You have euro becoming more and more important. So he foresee that's coming. Okay. Second, these currencies, especially the renminbi, would not necessarily be used as a reserve currency, but rather to settle trade. Play an increased role here. Okay. So I'm not saying that like U.S. economy is going back to the go back currency system. That would be crazy to do so because think of Russia. Right now, Russia is going back to the go back currency system, and the Russian economy is about having his doomsday. So I don't actually believe that U.S. economy is going back to the go back system. But here, Zoltan Pozsar clearly not say he's not saying that the U.S. economy system is going back to the go back currency system. He's saying gold could play an increased role, And I think that's definitely right because right now the gold price is still going up, and the fact that you have a high, more inflation embedded to the economic system that makes gold an excellent way to hedge the inflation risk. The third point would be the fact that China is running current account surpluses does not exclude their currency from becoming the world current reserve currency. In fact, the US can run surpluses post World War II, and these led to the dollar on its global reserve currency path. So he believes, Zoltan Pozsar believes this very important condition if you want to have a reserve currency. That means you need to have a current account surpluses. That means during the in the global trading system, you have to be profitable, right? You have to produce something, you have to sell something, you have to be profitable. That means that you have current account surpluses. That means people will have faith in your currency system. So right now, I believe like China is within its, I think, internal debt problem, but externally, China is still trading with other countries. China is still a very important part in the global trading system because other economists, despite the fact you have a industrialization, you have more and more factories moving out of China, going to the other countries like Indonesia, but still China for long term is still a very important part of global manufacturing, and you still need to purchase a lot of resources and goods from China. That's why, if your economy is running at the account surpluses, you may have an internal debt, but externally, you will have a global reserve currency. People would still want to hold maybe like 5% or 10% of RMB as a reserve backup. I think other economy system would definitely consider that. Maybe not like 30%, 40% of renminbi holding, but definitely 5% to 10%. So in that way, I think, Zoltan Pozsar had a point. Fourth, the Chinese are using swap lines into several international trade accounts. This is a fundamentally different approach from the dollar reserve framework and would mean that trade can occur in renminbi without nations needing to hold vast reserves of the currency. So this is a very important concept, and also the budgetary tool. We call this swap line. That means for countries small. We were talking about smaller scale of country, right? We're talking about mid-scale, smaller scale. We're not talking about developed economy system. We're not talking about like Canada, France, and all these big economy power. We're talking about like the majority of economy power. We're talking about we have like more than 200, 300 countries on this planet. So definitely we're talking about smaller scale of economy system. These economy system, they are using swap lines. Okay, they are using, that means that you're clearing their currency from one to another. So without using the dollar as the ultimate tool to clearing their transactions. Definitely, a swap line would be a very important supplement to the international trade. I have no idea how Xi Jinping is going to use this swap line, but definitely swap line is a good invention, right? So if you have a good monetary tool, it really takes a bright mind to use it, right? If you are very dumb, you're a dumb person, you're not necessarily you'll be able to know the importance of swap line. So you have a good tool. That means you probably gonna have good people, you have good team, you have good resources. You still will messed up because you're such a low intelligence bastard or retard, right? I think that actually makes sense. So the various crises that today's financial market participants have witnessed were easily solved by throwing money at whatever problem arose. The current inflation problem is different. Yes, I definitely agree with this point because right now we're actually we will exposed to the inflation risk for a longer period of time. Like right now, the mainstream narrative been saying that it's all going to be okay. The inflation is going to be controlled back to where it was. It's going to be 2%. Don't be panic. It's going. We are heading there very quickly, and we are really optimistic about the way how we will contain our inflation. I think that's a big lie because right now, if that were true, that people in the United States would have no inflation problem, people could afford their living, grocery and stuff, it wouldn't be a problem. Donald Trump wouldn't be out. Like right now, you see like Donald Trump actually win both. Uh, he gets his like presidency. That is the direct results of inflation risk in the U.S. Right? You people are perceiving more and more inflation. People are really angry about the fact that inflation is out of control, and people when people go on the street, people couldn't afford food to eat. People should always work for a second job, a third job, and that would be a big problem. So that's why inflation is a lie. The fact that inflation has been contained is a pure lie. Okay, so now the sixth point would be this situation is also vastly different from the late 70s with when Paul Volcker curbed inflation by prolonged high interest rate. Chronic underinvestments in the resource sector and labor issue would cause inflation to remain sticky. So I would emphasize during 1970s, the Paul Volcker thing. When in his time, you don't have a very complicated geopolitical situation back then, and you don't have like angry. I would say all these crazy conflicts between different nations. Basically, people just finished World War II. People want to have good time. People want to have keep making money for prosperity. But right now, I think we're heading towards definitely a more complicated and more dangerous time phrase because you're seeing some strong power, very strong leaders such as Putin and Xi wants to climb up the ladder, wants to overthrow the dollar system. And I think that's going to happen more often as we see more conflicts. Okay, so now because of all that, the inflation becomes more sticky. So you have wars. Wars always inflationary. You have like majority of the economic system struggling with debt problem, and that's also inflationary. The last point he made is the traditional 60-40 portfolio allocation will struggle in this environment. Zoltan recommends a 20-40-20-20. That means 20 for cash, 20% for stock, 20% for 40% for stock, 20% for bonds, and 20% for commodities. I think it actually makes sense because as a volatility traders, if you look at the VIX, right now the VIX is getting structurally high, so you have more volatile, definitely a more volatile market instead of a less volatile market, and you're actually seeing that it will be increasing difficult if you want to, I would say, get hold of the macro trends because it could go like up today, it could go down tomorrow. So it's very difficult in 2025. It's not going to be like 2020 to 2024. You had a great time longing stocks. You have less volatility. You have more bullish trends. So that's not going to happen. And now take a look at the Zoltan Pozsar's his own personal background. Zoltan Pozsar, he was the Credit Suisse ex economist, chief economist. So out of many economists and also senior advisors, I would still recommend people to read Zoltan Pozsar. One of the key reasons is that Zoltan Pozsar actually stayed in many sectors of the including United States governments. He stayed in. He used to work for Federal Reserve Bank of New York. He used to work for the Department of Treasury. He also consults the FSB. So he even works for IMF and all these different organizations. It's very important for economists to work in different sectors of the government because that experience gives them the exposure of how they actually know about the global monetary policies, tools, and all these very complicated setup inside of our like I would say modern days economy machine. Right. So by that opportunity and his own background, Zoltan gets the opportunity to work for these groups. That gives him expertise and advantage. So he had a better view and better understanding compared to most economists and scholars that who are only had several years straight experience working for simple job or simple department. Okay, so I would say in this way, Zoltan Pozsar is more competitive. So his words are actually more carries more weight and more meaning, because he's he has go through several important department and sector. He consulted for mostly leaders across the globe, and also he also pioneering in a global shadow banking system. So if you had a chance, please you can read his shadow banking work. He has many PDF published on his own personal websites. If you are a economy enthusiast, I think it would be extremely worthy for you to spend some time reading all of his materials. So his very deep understanding of the shadow banking system and also derivative system and credit markets gives him really strong edge when comes down to the global understanding of macro, I would say macroeconomic view. So that's why I highly recommend people to read Zoltan Pozsar's work, and I also highly recommend Zoltan Pozsar interview with in a Go console. So it's very information. It's very informative. All right, you get to know a lot of what he actually believes in, what he actually thinks about the current New World Order. So in the next episode, we will be covering about more of details of their interview. We will probably have one or two, and we'll be finishing this part. And in future, I'll be sharing more of his work, and hopefully you guys will enjoy my work. Please subscribe and press that like button for me. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.